you're in a high stress situation, you don't really know what happened. Okay. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been an accident, right?
Daniel here from the Truck Insurance Channel. We're in Greenville, South Carolina today, our first road trip for an interview. And here with a very special guest. Rob, if you want to introduce yourself, tell us about you.
I'm Rob Moseley with Moseley Marshnack Law Group in Greenville. We represent trucking companies.
I really appreciate you having us. This is exciting. The first thing I wanted to talk about, because it's becoming a topic I hear more and more about, restructuring. So I started a trucking company, I'm growing, and now I've got to consider some things for restructuring.
We work with people almost daily on restructuring and what happens. You start a trucking company and all of a sudden you've grown and you've got 50 trucks or whatever, and you've opened a brokerage and you now are starting to think about an equipment leasing company, putting all your equipment into a separate company, or maybe you're in warehousing or something like that. Then all of a sudden you're realizing that you probably shouldn't be doing all that in your original trucking company, or maybe your advisors are telling you, hey, you need to think about making some changes with that because maybe that's not the best setup for liability or tax reasons. People come into us and their company has been through 10 years of neglect or however long it's been. It's a good opportunity for us to try to reevaluate where they are, try to figure out how are we going to do this, what are our options for giving you a more serviceable entity, maybe setting up a holding company for you that could give you some tax advantages as well.
Do you see people going after tax advantages more often or more of the liability? Because for me, in law, liability is important to what we do. So at what point are people normally coming to you?
I think that people want the liability protection that they see in a restructured company, but at the same time, they're not wanting to incur tax liability. So our goal is to try to have a reorganization, but make it tax neutral so that it doesn't cost them anything to make those changes. Oftentimes you can find ways to actually save some tax money, but that's not necessarily the primary goal. It's just not to spend tax money.
Yeah. Is that something y'all help out with the tax side, or is
We're not tax lawyers, but we do. We know enough to send you to the accountant and make sure that you're getting good advice on those kind of things.
One thing I wanted to add here real quick, if anyone is thinking about restructuring, a few things that typically become issues is following the money. How does the money flow between the different entities? How do bills go out? How do loads come in? Who is your vendor's actual customer? Like which company? Another thing that people run into a lot is just transferring of equipment from one entity to another, and then use of the equipment and employees between companies. You don't want to have any commingling or employees assigned to one company, but they're actually performing services for one of the other entities. So these are all things to take into consideration. You definitely want to get an attorney if you're going to do any of this. Everyone's situation is unique. I know people love to consult with friends and family about all this, but honestly, I would get a professional that can look at what you currently have, what you're trying to do, and help you accomplish all of that without making a giant mess. So just something I wanted to add here.
So restructuring is one topic I wanted to touch on. The next thing would be dash cams. Obviously, insurance companies are headed that way. They want you to have dash cams, road facing, inside cab, driving facing. Tell us your thoughts on dash cams.
I love the cameras, and one of the main reasons I love the cameras is that Virginia Tech, and there have been some other studies that show that 75% of the accidents that happen in the vicinity of a commercial vehicle are the fault of a passenger vehicle. And we're not winning 75% of those cases. And so part of the reason is we're not telling a good enough story.
It's a big number.
It is. And if we've got cameras, that helps us tell the story. And I can't overemphasize how much I love dash cameras, okay? So I'm a big fan. I send these dash cameras to plaintiffs lawyers all the time, and I say, hey, take a look at this, see what you think. If it's very favorable to us, a lot of times those cases just go away. Now, those cases before dash cam, those cases would be filed, and we would litigate those cases. And so it'd be a he said, she said situation. But also, if it is a clear liability accident on the part of the driver, the truck driver, I want to know that too. That helps me from going down the wrong path. It also gives us an opportunity to try to take advantage of early settlement if we know that this is one we're going to have to eat. And so I tell folks when they implement dash cameras that you've got three things to think about. Number one is somebody in your organization has to look at these videos. So we can't just have the dash cameras and nobody's ever going to look at the videos. And then secondly, we're going to coach these drivers. We're going to help them to be better drivers, learn from their mistakes in the videos. And then finally, we need to manage those videos because we don't necessarily need to have videos sticking around for 5-6 years when a driver's still driving for you. I would say that once that video is no longer necessary for actively managing your driver, then that video needs to be set to disappear. Most video systems have a setting that you can select that says we're going to keep these for 60 days or 90 days or whatever. Now, obviously, if there's a crash, we're going to capture that. We're going to save that. We're not going to let that disappear. If there's no crash, there's no reason to keep those videos. Coach the drivers, help them to be better drivers, and get them back on the road.
I understand where the driver's not at fault, but they're being blamed, right? We know this happens, obviously.
Sure.
Now, you're saying there's a benefit if you are at fault.
I think there's a benefit to knowing what happened and not being overly critical of drivers, but you've just had an accident on the highway. You're in a high stress situation. You don't really know what happened. Okay. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been an accident, right? You don't really understand the dynamics of what just happened. And maybe you saw a little bit of it, but you didn't see the whole picture. And so the driver tells me a story, there's of course the opportunity for the driver just to fabricate, just to say, I want to save my job. I'm going to tell a story. Let's give the driver the benefit of the doubt. A lot of times they're telling you what they think you want to hear. The cameras help us understand what's going on. And even front-facing cameras don't tell the whole story all the time.
Right.
The side mirror cameras do a really good job of giving us more data and more information. You can look at the front-facing cameras, and sometimes you can get information off of the mirrors. You can see in the mirror from the camera that what this other driver was doing. I think it's not long before the FMCSA is going to mandate cameras.
That's the same thing with ELDs previously. I worked in Verizon.
Yeah, right.
Back before the mandate, and we were like picking up vendors that sold the hardware, and we just piggybacked to the network, and we started buying up a bunch of those. And so we were testing out a lot of different vendors. And it was very difficult to sell ELDs before they were mandated. But yeah, I kind of see that direction happening too.
It just seems like that's a really good opportunity to improve safety on the highways, to mandate cameras.
Can you tell us anything about claims, like maybe do's and don'ts in a claim situation?
Sure. You just have an accident and you're seeing all this paperwork. You're getting a reservation rights letter from your insurance company, and things are moving pretty fast for you. I think that the best thing to do is to really try to understand what's going on and be active with your insurance company. I think the worst thing you can do is just be passive and not respond to things and simply.
I get attest to that.
Yeah. I just don't let things go into default. Make sure that you're staying in touch with your driver, even if you fired the driver. Now I'm a big fan of early intervention in an accident, and obviously we go out to the scene of accidents. I read an expert report the other day that was saying that he'd never heard of lawyers being on the scene of an accident, and we're regularly on the scene of accidents, especially serious ones, if we can get out there fast enough to try to really get a handle on what's going on. The highway patrol is normally in such a hurry to open the highway that they get those tow trucks out there and they get rid of the evidence really quickly. And so the faster you can get your people out there. So if you have a serious accident, I'd ask my insurance company to send somebody out there right away, even if it's just an adjuster. The adjusters can do a really good job of trying to figure out who's towing what vehicle where and preserving some of the evidence that was present at the scene, especially in construction zones. You have stuff moving around all the time. Once a case has gone into litigation, push your adjuster, push your lawyer to learn more about what's going on, and feel free to talk to your adjuster about what you want to see happen in the case. whether you want it settled, whether you don't want it settled. Those are opportunities that you have to try to, have an influence on your own world. And I've got a client that is very active in managing her company's claims, and she's always saying, "Okay, when's our next conversation?" And so she sets a deadline for when tasks are going to be advanced, and she gets back with the adjuster, and they have a conversation. But she sets an end date for when she wants to see those things, the next steps in the case, and so she gets results. The adjusters are doing the best job they can, but I'll tell you that her cases are going to get more attention than somebody else's cases because there's accountability.
Yeah, and she's pushing it along.
She's pushing it.
Very active. Switch gears. One last topic for this new litigation.
Yeah, we were just talking a minute ago. Just this morning, the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals issued a decision in the Yang Yi case, and that's a case that a lot of people have been watching. It involves federal preemption of liability for freight brokers. So it's 14501C is the statute. It says that no state may make a law that affects the price, routes, and service of an interstate carrier or an interstate broker. There have been all these series of personal injury cases against freight brokers for the alleged negligent selection of motor carriers. And these are motor carriers that have been determined by the FMCSA that are fit to operate in the United States on interstate highways. The intent of that statute was that no state should interfere with that. I mean, it's a basic sixth grade civics that states are not to regulate interstate commerce. And so we've gotten this decision today that says that the broker in this case, Global Trans, is not liable because of federal preemption statutes that for an injury claim caused by the trucker that Global Trans had hired to move the freight. This makes two circuit courts that have decided in favor of federal preemption for freight brokers. We have the Ninth Circuit is the outlier now. In the Miller case, they decided that preemption did not apply. The U.S. Supreme Court decided not to accept that case. And so since then, two other circuits have decided in favor of freight brokers. And that's a really big issue in injury litigation involving commercial vehicles today.
Well, we'll wrap it up here. Rob, if anyone wanted to get in touch with you or find your law firm, how would they do that?
Sure. We're on the web at momarlaw.com. That's momarlaw.com. We have lawyers here in South Carolina, Georgia, lawyers licensed in North Carolina as well.
Thanks again for coming on. Everybody watching, if you haven't already, like and subscribe. Stay tuned. Be safe out there, and we'll see you in the next one.